Before we get started with this session, I just would like to thank everyone that made it to a Saturday evening session at the SBs. It's a task, especially when the weather's so lovely. We were just talking about how do you compete with the weather like that. But thanks for being here in the room, and we're very excited for this session with the UN System Staff College, our partner for this session. So, and we're gonna. It's quite interesting. Where lots of group work. You can see post-its and flip charts, and then laptops in front of you, and we're going to use a tool as well. So yeah, welcome to the final session of Youth for Capacity at SB60. And with that, I'll pass it over to UNSSC colleagues.
Hello, I've been asked, this is very weird, I've been asked to use the mic for folks online. You can see us. But since this is a small group, it's a nicer opportunity to work a little closely together, and we can actually do introductions, which I think would be difficult in an hour with a group of 40 people, we were told. But let me start with myself. I'm Samant. I work for the Staff College. We are also situated in this building 7 floors below, and that's Talita. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Talita. I also work at UNSSC. We are both from part of the Knowledge Center for Sustainable Development, and Saman will share a little bit more about our agency.
Are we doing slides? Yes. Yeah, so very quickly, we mentioned the Staff College, that's UNSSC, that's the UN System Staff College. And the college was set up more than 20 years ago. It was a very inward-facing staff college, as the name suggests, where it was created to train UN staff mostly on leadership and management for very senior people. But then around 2015, there was this great need to say that we cannot actually have a Paris Agreement and a 2030 agenda and not have any kind of capacity building around this. So which is the Knowledge Center for Sustainable Development, we were created in 2015 as a result of the big international agreements getting adopted. And we found our home here in Bonn. In fact, this is not our first home in Bonn. We used to be. Is anyone from Bonn here? Oh, I wasn't expecting Bonners. So you really should get a prize because it does mean a lot to you that it's sunny for one day out of 11 in the last 2 weeks. So special points for them. Well, then you might know that there's a castle down the road. It's called Haus Kastanian, for those of you who know it. And we were there for 5 years, and which was a very fun training environment. And we had a lot of face-to-face trainings. But then COVID hit, and that dried up. And a combination of factors meant that we landed up in this building on the 12th floor, which is actually a happy coincidence because the UN family has grown as well in the last 7 years since 2015. 7? No, it's now that would be 9, right? Yeah, I've been here 7 years. In the last 9 years, and from I think 18 agencies back in the day, we are up to 26, if I'm not wrong. So it's really nice to be with the people that we're actually supposed to work with. But that's not the only people we are supposed to work with. So the staff college is now the staff college only in name, which is to say it's not just for staff. A lot of our trainings are then open to people who are doing the actual work. And that could be people from civil society. It could be, I don't know, youth groups maybe. It could be people from governments. And we have a lot of trainings that happen online, which are open for, we do these 6-week facilitated courses. And we see a vast cross-section of people. And the real value in that really is it's not so much serving up content, but it's the discussions you see people have when you meet people from different sectors, from different parts of the world, from very different points of view, maybe attacking the same problem, but from a different perspective. So that's the kind of work that we do. So that's a very brief introduction. We did bring some flyers and the like, and I think we have some QR codes. So if you want to explore some of our free courses, and I think Talita will tell us about one specific one that she's going to run later this year on sustainable lifestyles. But yeah, that's a brief introduction to who we are and what we do. And with that, I think I should hand over to you so you can tell us what we're doing today. Yeah.
Thank you. Really, if you could just skip 2 slides. Next one. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. As someone just said, special thanks to all of you because you're here despite the nice weather. Our activity to date was planned around one of the main narratives that we work with and at UNSSC, which is the importance of harnessing synergies between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda. We tend to approach these two commitments and these two big documents as if they were completely separate things. At UNSSC, all our courses, they bring this narrative, the importance of not only synergizing the SDGs, but also bringing climate action closer to sustainable development. And we do this through very interactive and iterative exercises. And the idea is you're going to use the game. Probably you have played it before. How many of you know the game or have played it before? Good. Okay. Perfect. Yes. So this game was not developed by us. This game was developed actually by the Financial Times. And the idea is to bring something that was very action oriented to the broader public to kind of spark the reflection on how do we reach net zero by 2050. So this game can be played online. You can do it on your phone or laptops. And the idea is you're going to kind of role play as if you were the minister for future generations and you have this big task on your hand, and throughout the game you're going to make different decisions that are going to lead to outcomes, hopefully trying to achieve the best scenario you can to make to bring us closer to net zero. Of course, that depending on the situation and the context and different events that happen that are out of your control, maybe your decisions might lead to different outcomes, and this is kind of the fun of the game. What we are going to do today is we are going to maybe ask you to split in two groups, if this is fine. So I think the four of you there and maybe the four of you here. Yes, of course. Why not? Lila, just because I already know you, do you want to start? Yeah. Like this gets be taught online, offline, all of the combination. Just a reflection in the last 3 years, I've done many first ones that I'm attending at the college. Very excited. Good.
Okay, let's get started.
Yeah, all right, perfect then. So as I was saying, we are going to ask you to split into two groups. So maybe you four and then the other group is there. You're going to use only one laptop per group. So the person that is going to manage the laptop, if you can go to the game, if you just Google climate game, Financial Times, you'll find it, but there's also the link there. Yeah, 5 and 5, why not? So if we can have only one laptop per group, I don't know who wants to be the one with the laptop. So this here and this here. All right, so the way this game works is, as I mentioned, we have 3 rounds. We're probably only going to play 2 rounds here, but each round refers to a specific time frame. So we start with today, and you're going to be presented with 6 or 7 questions per round. What I want you to do first is obviously open the game, if you please. So Climate Game Financial Times, you should be able to find it in Google. Yeah, are we there? Okay. Yeah. Yes, perfect. Okay. So just skip the first and stop in the screen that says advisors. Yeah. All right. So we have 4 advisors. I'm going to ask you to choose one. Let's just make sure that each group has a different advisor. Okay. So if you want to discuss first in your groups, and then we just make sure that we have chosen 2 different people.
Shouts it out first. They get the first.
Okay, so David's taken. Oh my God, where is the gender balance here, people?
In the room.
Yeah. Okay, so just select your advisor, please. And the way this game is going to run is you have effort points. Each decision will cost you, of course, some effort points. I'm already going to tell you that, of course, the ideal decisions, they are more costly. And this is what's going to make you progress in the game. The thing is, sometimes even though you see an ideal option, you won't be able to make it because of the effort points. So you will have to keep in mind how many effort points you have. And there's a score there, I think probably on the left side of your screen. And also you can keep track of the CAO emissions. So the idea is let's try to make the best decisions possible with the effort points that we have and trying to, as much as possible, reduce the CaO2 emissions. The catch is every decision that you take here has to be consensual. So unless everyone in the group is minimally satisfied or okay with the decision, you cannot make the decision. Okay? We are going to let you play the game. We are going just to keep track of time. So the idea is you're going to have around 10 to 15 minutes per round. Let's see how many rounds we can complete in kind of 30 minutes, maybe.
Yes. Now the papers, we don't need that.
Yeah. No, sorry. There's one thing. So you have 2 papers there, and there are 2 questions that were selected from the different questions that you will get. What we are going to ask you to do now, we are not going to use these questions now, but I will ask you to mark once you reach the question that you have in front of you. Just make sure that you mark on the paper which was the option that the group decided to select. We're not going to use this now, but this is for the next activity. Okay, good. All right, so good luck. And I don't know if we have someone online, but if we do, you can also open and play the game.
Hi, folks online. We have, I don't know, what are our points? Is this the remaining 9?
Okay.
Oh, so we have 28 remaining points, and we are at 1.6, and we have reduced by 24.4. What about you guys? 9.8, we need to reduce.
About the group here.
Okay, so we reached 1.7 and we had a change of 19.6 and effort points remaining is 13.
So Talita, tell us if we were playing for points or not. Are we playing to win? No, obviously. Yeah.
If it serves of any consolation, we spend our
Points before we could finish the game. Yeah, we went for broke, so don't. Yeah, that's why the great advice of don't do what we did. Yeah. But how was that? Any reflections on this one? Okay. That's kind of the point, right? This only moves in one direction. Yeah. Any other reflections on that? Maybe. I'm close.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that our group should have made more investments at the beginning. We were too conservatives, only took 2 options, right? Yeah, and we should have gone more because apparently investments kind of pays off. Yeah. Yeah, we invest in the vehicle battery and the green hydrogen. Both of them pays off. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was another choice except for the 6 investments choices. Yeah. By the time when there were some some options that cost 40, 45 points, we're not even rich enough to do that. So yeah, we were the very rich for a moment, but then that's when we. Oh. That's exactly what. What about you?
So we are not so conservative about the choices. I think most of the occasions we spend a lot and gain a lot. I think that's in general quite wise. But sometimes we were hesitating between the two choices, focusing on the verbs, for example, banning something or eliminating something. And we were thinking, is this time long enough, like till 2030? Is this long enough, 10 years? So I think that's the difficult part. Yeah, we are thinking about whether these are realistic or not.
For me, for the group, I think when we talk about and we want to make a decision, the difficult part was to not make angry to the people that sometimes they are in social media like, why you say that, why you do that, and everything. And later we find like something about politicians. So it's like the reality that you want to make a lot of efforts and later you have a lot of problems with the society, or maybe you need to find other things that is going to make inflations. So it's like make a balance between the climate actions and the reality of the people in the daily, in the routine. But yeah, something like that. I think the last one that we have 40, that we are going to lose 40 points. Oh, yeah, yeah. That was like only in that moment. Yeah, no, never.
To do nothing at a certain point.
But I think we have other perspective in life. Maybe if you do with other people that don't feel like that, they are not going to choose the same that us.
At a certain point, we did. In the very last one. But I think that 40-point question is there for a reason. It shows you that longer you wait, the more things cost, and that's the point of that. And we had to go for it. Then it was too late. Hence, thank you. And what was the hard choice for this group? Was there one where you had to spend a lot of time debating? Anything? You're like, no, you're wrong. That's just the wrong answer. You cannot. And then yeah.
I think on the yeah, I mean, I don't know if we had the one on the building one. We were quite straightforward, but the carbon price one, we were like, the options aren't really what we want to see, anyways. One choice that was difficult was when there was like really crazy ideas. We were like, do we pick that because we would get more reductions? But then we were like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. Let's just pick something else. So I think that came up in the airplane, the London. The London to Sydney one, yeah, the hypersonic plane one, we didn't pick that because we're like, that's probably not going to happen. Doesn't make sense. So, yeah, but not really like hard choices. One thing I would say is that a reflection was that the tipping points where, you kind of have to plan for random events happening as well. So that was like one of the things that I noticed, but I don't know if you want to add anything else to it.
I just remember about there's an option that you replace all the proteins in your diets, that you have to make them all coming from insects. And to me, that was a very a very attractive option because it only costs 2 effort points. But think about how much like gains you will have from this, because you're basically like phasing out all the agriculture products. Exactly, yeah. So that's a very, I would say, inhuman option, but just thinking from a very pure cost effective logical thinking, I would say that's a very attractive option. No, we didn't pick that.
Yeah, so similar to the observations from the other group, we had to find a balance between making decisions that were going to be effective and help people while also not destroying cultural contexts or basically making the people hate the government. And so for example, we didn't go with the insects, and we also didn't pick the option to have like all buildings redone at the one category because we thought it would be too invasive. So I think one of the risks or opportunities with the expensive questions were some were just too random and others would be very effective but too invasive. So it's kind of about finding that balance where it's neither the one or the other. Yeah.
No, I think that, yes, Stella, right? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we were also discussing, I think it's the one on transport, where the option was ban all global sales of traditional cars by 2035 and invest in electric cars. So I think ban is a strong word, but at the same time, 2035 is in 10 years. And if you see how the market is responding to so many things and thinking how fast technology is going, thinking about AI, that we're not saying we're going to ban the cars, we're going to ban the sale of the cars. And then that word doesn't sound so scary. But we also came up with that might make sense from a global north perspective, but potentially from a global south perspective, there's the difficulty in access to these vehicles at all. And then the second one is to actually build up the renewable energy fueling stations, right?
No, yeah. I think last 2 comments and all of this, you hit the nail on the head. And I think that's pretty much where we are headed with what Talita wants to present now. Because if you remember at the outset, we said, yes. Yeah, can we just use the mic? Yes. We did say in the beginning when we were starting that when we were created, the idea was that we talk about the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement together, because it's very easy to have tunnel vision, and rightly so. Sometimes there are big things that need to be done which require focus, but we are all guilty of this. We kind of fall into just looking at the thing from our lens. But the whole point of an activity like this is that you are looking at all those dimensions of sustainable development. So people cannot be ignored while we are all trying to lower the rate of global warming, or when we are looking at how do we reduce our carbon emissions. Similarly, you want to make a economic transformation, but it's not something that happens overnight. So what about livelihoods? So that really was the point of this, and I think that's what you've arrived at. And just to think about it maybe in a slightly different way, I think I'm going to hand over to Talita, who's going to take us through the next few slides and give us a few things to think about on this.
Talita, just before you begin, we actually had someone play the game online as well. So we have a comment from the online participants.
Good.
So she says, hi, I just completed round 3 and it says your planet is now on the course of 1.47 degree warming. You've achieved the Paris Accord. You belong to 32% of players. It's cool and fun. The decision making was fun, and choosing your advisor plays the trick as well. And that was, again, another question that I had as well. Did it matter what advisor we chose and how we went? I don't know. Maybe I could ask them.
Yeah, because then
Yeah.
you know for next.
Yeah, so the advisor, it does influence the final outcome. What happens is, depending on the skill set that the advisor has, you're going to have more positive or negative outcomes from your decision. So this is something interesting. That's why we wanted you to pick different advisors, because it does influence the result.
And it will balance out too, because in certain things, one advisor is better placed.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we had in our group, we were like, this advisor is not really advising us too much. So yeah, we picked the entrepreneur. Just
Let's fire this person. Let's get another one, right?
yeah.
Okay, good. So maybe we can just move to the next discussion. Actually, already raised many of the points that we wanted to raise with you. But the idea is, as we mentioned earlier, at UNSSC, what we do is really try to highlight in all our courses the synergies between the Paris Agreement and sustainable development. And I think the game kind of showed how tricky it is to make decisions that you know that sometimes they are the ideal ones when you are looking from a climate perspective, but they might not be the ideal one if you consider, for example, the impact on livelihoods, or maybe the smartest investment. And this is a little bit of the discussion here today. I don't know, is this in front of you or can you see it? So obviously, all of you are familiar with the definition of sustainable development, which is a development that not only ensures that we get what we need, but we also make sure that future generations can develop in a satisfactory way. So really, if you can please go to the next one, which is amazing. But how do we get there? How do we reach sustainable development, or how do we make sure that our next generations, they also have the chance to develop? What do you think? Have we come up with a plan already?
I think, like we discussed, one of the useful things to do is to really understand what people care about most, because it's easy to make drastic decisions in areas that people maybe will protest about less, and areas that are maybe more connected to livelihood or culture need long-term planning with steady developments, where ideally you do get the consent of people so they understand why you're making the changes. So like one of the choices where we didn't pick a good one was a Twitter campaign rather than like a global campaign on raising awareness about the issue.
Yeah, no, this is very good. Thinking about public opinion, but also the impact for different groups. We actually came up with a plan, right? Internationally, which is the 2030 agenda. So really, please, the next one. Actually, 2015 was the year of bold commitments, as we say, because we not only created a plan to guide us or to be used as a reference for future development plans, but we also agreed on the Paris Agreement, which would give us also this reference on how to deal with climate change and how to make sure that we would tackle the main challenges that we have concerning climate change. So please read it, the next one. The 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you have seen 1,000 times. I'm sure some of you already know all the SDGs by heart. They are supposed to guide us through the process, right? So one question for you is, when you look for the SDGs, what it is that you see when you see the 17 SDGs there, or when you use them to think about your daily work, or when you are in a conference like this one and someone mentions the SDGs, how do you think they can be used to discuss development, for example?
My work is normally with large corporates, and I see it as a way, first, as a really good communication tool, an engagement tool. It's brilliant if you're walking into a room with CEOs, CSOs, or with an operator that doesn't know anything and just wants to get started. And then from there, I think it's also a really good connection point with their own agendas and with their own sustainability or corporate responsibility commitments. So as an example, we can see that I think telecom, which sits right across the Rhine from us, one of their key SDGs is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, because that's the area that they work in, right? So then you can kind of easily pull it out. I think where it can be improved is that we as humans love to focus on things and we love to specialize. And that's what we've done as an economic system in the last 200 years. But that leads to we need to think like nature, right? And nature doesn't think in just one way. So if you're thinking like nature, how do we get companies to also think about no poverty? Like, how is DHL thinking about no poverty in Bonn or wherever else that they are located, or as the 11th largest employer in the world? So that's where it gets a little bit tough, and would love to learn from you all how you're not segregating the SDGs.
Yeah. Anyone else? When you discuss SDGs or when you approach SDGs in your work or your studies, do you usually choose one, for example? Do you have a preference?
Hello. Most of the time, I work with partnership for the goals, always, because I think it's very important to focus in make alliances with the private, public, and organizations and climate actions, of course, too, and other ones we choose and depends of the project and the public that is going to be the focus in that moment. So most of the time, climate action and partnership is the main in this case.
So normally you work with SDG 13 and 17, let's say, partnerships and climate action.
Yeah, yes.
Anyone else?
So my work is mostly in business and human rights. So yeah, environmental and human rights due diligence, which obviously spans across lots of different sectors. So I think in our case, it's the other way around. We have a starting point where we need to bring together different worlds that many people don't view under one topic heading. And it's possible to use the SDGs to say there's this kind of common big goal, and maybe you in your day-to-day work are only focusing on 2 or 3 of these, but for example, the fashion sector has more than just 1 or 2 relevant SDGs. So they're really useful illustration. But I think especially in the corporate sector, it's not possible to make a holistic change just through 1 or 2 of them.
Perfect. So I think one of the main aspects when we look, for example, to this agenda is the fact that each SDG is in a box, right? So we tend to think them individually. But as you just said, in your daily work, you actually mobilize more than one SDG. And the fact is, it's really hard to only mention one SDG without dealing with implications to other SDGs. So, for example, fashion industry, you're dealing with livelihoods, you're dealing with the environment, you are dealing with inequalities as well. Sometimes gender empowerment, education. Same thing when we think about partnerships. Partnerships actually is a cross-cutting issue of, I would say, all SDGs. So one thing that we have to keep in mind is whenever we're discussing the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, it's not cherry picking. We cannot say, no, I only like SDG 4 and I will ignore all the others. Every activity we suggest, every daily work we engage in, we have to bring this narrative that, yeah, of course, we can be champions, let's say, for SDG 14, but let's see how it interacts and connects with the others. You can skip the next one. So I'm sure you probably saw this before, the 5 Ps, and what this perspective on the agenda brings is actually this connection. The 5 Ps, which is also in the original document of the 2030 agenda, reinforces this idea of connection. So it's impossible to think about people without thinking about prosperity, without thinking about peace, partnership, and planet. I know it may seem a bit obvious when we look at nice framework, colorful framework like this one. But the truth is, how many national policies, for example, take into account more than one of these dimensions when they are prepared? I'm sure you have heard something like, yes, of course, climate action is great, but we have to make sure that we advance economic development. Therefore, if we have to choose, we are going to go with economic development. Have you heard this before? This is one big example of a national policy that actually takes into account only one of these dimensions. If you can go to the next one, really, please. So at UNSSC, can you help me, please? Thank you. We have come up with an analogy or a metaphor to this connection, which is the Rubik's Cube. I'm sure all of us have played with this before. I don't think we have 12, we have 10. Yeah. So if someone can share, yeah. But the thing is, whenever we play the Rubik's Cube, we are dealing with different topics, right? So we are trying to make sure that all the colors align. If you check our Rubik's Cube, you're going to see that each one of the faces or the sides of the Rubik's Cube, they actually represent one of the 5 P's. Please don't start playing now. So what I want you to do is let's play a little bit of policy making here. Identify, please, in your Rubik's Cube, the people side, which is light purple, and the prosperity side, yellow. Yeah? So what we are going to do is we're going to create here a policy that makes sure that a special group, so a vulnerable group, gets some extra income through, I don't know, let's say maybe cash transfers. So you're mixing people and prosperity. Can you mix one line of people with one line of prosperity without affecting climate? Please try. So you have to combine one line of the purple one with one line of the yellow one without changing the green side. Without changing the green side. So I want one purple with one yellow, but no green has to be affected. No, not possible. Yeah, so actually what happens is this is a tricky exercise because as we all know, it's impossible to make any policy that deals with people and prosperity without affecting the climate. What the cubic here does is to show how interconnected these 5 areas are and how it's impossible to think about one things. No, it's fine. We are two. We can manage without affecting the others. And especially when you think about the Paris Agreement, what few people consider is that whenever we are talking about the Paris Agreement, we are actually discussing a development agenda. So the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda, they are actually different pieces of the same puzzle. It's impossible to talk about climate change. It's impossible to talk, for example, about just transitions, about loss and damage without thinking about development. Please, next. So what is the goal that the Paris Agreement has set? The goal is to limit global warming. It sets 3 big areas, so mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage should be somehow working together to make sure that we limit global warming. Amazing, but how are we going to do this without thinking about development policies? So the implementation of the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda, actually, they have to be planned together. The transformations that we have to implement to make sure that we reach the goal established in the Paris Agreement, it's of such a big dimension that if we do not combine these two policy making or policy planning spheres, we are not going to achieve this new type of development that we should look for, which is climate resilient development. I'm sure you have heard this buzzword before, right? climate resilient development actually is development that also takes into account climate and climate considerations. Please, next. So understanding how the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda are interlinked will help us maximize synergies and minimize trade-offs. As you have seen in the game, sometimes the decision that was the ideal one from the climate side actually caused some social impacts or some economic impacts that were unforeseen. What we now want you to do is, you still have the paper with the 2 questions, right? Good. Were you able to mark your options? Perfect. So what I want you to do now is, let's check the option that we chose as a group, and let's think of some of the trade-offs and the synergies that you can see of these options that you chose with the SDGs. So let's say, for example, this group had the question on electricity, and they chose to stop all new coal plants globally and close those in wealthy countries. Amazing, a very good decision from the climate perspective. But can you think about some of the trade-offs that this decision might have brought? Can you think about some of the synergies, or what were other SDGs that were benefited by this discussion? So what I want you to do now is, please put these 2 questions on the flip chart. We are going to give you some Scotch tape, and I want you to list some of the synergies and trade-offs that you see for each one of the questions and each one of the decisions you made. Sounds good? We are going to give you maybe 10 minutes, yes, to have this discussion in group and list, using the post-it notes, some of the synergies and some of the trade-offs. If you want to use the SDGs as a reference to mark, so we see a trade-off with SDG, I don't know, 16 or 14, please do so. Okay? All right, so 10 minutes, let's discuss what are the synergies and trade-offs of our decisions. Yeah, welcome. Yeah. Shall we wrap up the discussion on the second question? Yeah? Okay, so maybe if the 2 groups can just quickly present a little bit of their discussion. First tell us what was the action that you chose and for each question, and then walk us through a little bit of your thinking process for synergies and trade-offs. Would you like to start? Maybe the group that finished first over there? Who wants to present? Yeah. Okay. At the front.
Okay, so this is, hope everyone can see it, our group for the transport. It's like our choice is like ban the sales of the cars, but also invest on the new cars and the electric cars. For the pros, of course, it's like we're heading we're combating the climate change, so it's linking, of course, to the climate change, to the climate. And also number 8, which I think that's sort of like related to the industry, if that's, or the economic growth or something. Let me read it. Yeah, the growth of the economy, because we're investing in the new energies, like I know, like we have the hydrogen, like the hydrolysis as the new resources for the electric cars and also the batteries. So, and then the next we have the sustainable cities. For what I can think of it is like we have the auto drive, and then the transport sector is like we can have sustainable railway plannings, and also like the freight, the smart freight, and the cities and the urban planning for how to reduce the congestion of the roads. So that's also because the emissions also come if like it depends on how efficient the road is. The next one we have is the third one. Sorry, this I don't know. Okay, yeah, this the well-being, the healthy human health. Of course, like we have the greenhouse gas emission reductions. The 13 and the 17 is like the last one. We deal with the car dealers and the new growth of the renewable energy companies and smart cars. So that's for the positive side. And of course, for the negative part, we have number 10, which we have the 8 on the positive side and also on the negative side. And also that one could be somehow explained and captured by SDG number 10, which we think of, okay, for the developed countries or like the countries with the access to the new materials, they may have like embrace the economic growth, but on the other hand, it's vice versa. So that's like being captured in 10, like the differences come up to the inequalities. And this one also explained. And then the 6th is the sanitation, as I think like the more we invest in the electric materials, like the minerals, the critical minerals, it has issues dealing with maybe like the transboundary when it comes to like the mining and the tailings, and also the extractives, how we deal with the critical materials. So it's like also influence the water sector. And the 12s, that would be like sustainable. If we think of this, also goes hand in hand. Like we think in the life cycle perspective. That's okay. We need to think of where the materials goes and comes and goes. So that's sort of our group have on this the transport sector item. And then if we go to the next one. When we talk about the electricities, and then the question is, coal makes up to 3/4 of the carbon dioxide produced by the electricity, and our groups gave the response like we stop all the new coal plants globally and close them in a wealthy country. For this one, we agreed to have, of course, 13 again on the climate as the positive part. And also the 17th also I make mistakes every time. So it's like we close one of the most emitters of the coal, like the fossil fuels. It's sort of our like co-focus on the agenda that we're phasing out the fossil fuels. And also number 11, again, like it can make our life more sustainable in this direction. And number 14, which this one is like the seawater, the sea lives, I guess. Could anyone help with the further explanation? Because this one is not, I'm not coming up with the 14th, but if any of teammates could add up on that, the 14th.
We wouldn't have coal going into water systems.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that applies also to the 15th. That's related to the land use and also the vegetations. And this part, the columns, the negative part, is like I sort of hop in. I think even though we're talking about like phasing out of the fossil fuels, it still owns a great share of the market. And also we have the providers and the sources where countries are very rich in these resources, and then they can really, it's like they own the price advantages. So it's like, okay, and then now we're investing more on the new technologies. It means like the cost is, of course, it's going to be high. So that's sort of the trade-offs we can. But I mean, overall, we are heading to it where as long as the it's getting more effective, yeah, the prices will be hitting down. But so far, yeah, thanks. And then over to the next group.
Okay. Is it still? Yeah. So for our first question, it was the one on buildings and instructions. Construction make almost 1/3 of energy. Your cities are growing fast in developing countries. What will you do? And we picked to improve efficiency standards for cooling and other appliances. And we saw synergies with, of course, SDG 11 for sustainable cities and communities. I don't think I have to explain the connection. Then SDG 9 was for industry, innovation, and infrastructure, because with new efficiency standards, you do have the innovation. Maybe you need new infrastructure for the system and the appliances to work. SDG 13, of course, climate action. Then we picked SDG 7 as well, because if they work more efficient, we're going to use less energy. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. We decided that even though that doesn't necessarily mean that the consumers are deciding to consume less, but the government is kind of making the decision for them because they're investing in these standards and making them therefore hopefully more available as well. And then last but not least, SDG 3. For that, I'm also not sure anymore what the connection was.
We were just thinking that if you have better cooling mechanisms, then that's going to improve health in hot countries where otherwise consistent hot temperatures might, lead to all kinds of problems.
Okay, thank you. And then for the trade-offs, we picked SDG 1 because you might have to take into account that with higher standards, at least for a while, the devices are going to be more expensive, which then would also lead probably to an SDG 10, which we haven't written down, but now that I'm thinking of it, might also be a trade-off. Okay, I think we can go to the second one. Or would one of you like to? Yeah? Okay,
Thank you. So for the second question, it's about carbon pricing. The question is, economic incentives can also help cut carbon emissions. Polluters in Europe are paying about 100 euros for every tons that is released. Do you want to set a global carbon price? And the option we chose was yes, set the carbon price that rises to $250 per ton for developed countries by 2050. And apparently this, because it's carbon pricing, so of course the synergies include SDG 13, it's a climate action. And also we believe that by nudging, or say by better navigating the economic system, it will contribute to more sustainable cities and communities when investors are making their investment decisions. That is why we also include SDG 11 on the synergies. And also, unlike the previous question, we're talking about consumers. In this case, we're more talking about the producers, and carbon pricing can help them to make more wiser and more climate-friendly decisions when they're making their investment decisions, which is why we also include SDG 12 on the synergies. As for the trade-offs, personally, when we were making this decision, I don't like the first and the third decision at all, because I feel like if we're like manually setting a price on this, it's against the idea of carbon pricing, because carbon pricing is about using the market instruments. Whether you believe it works or not, the idea is about to use this market instrument while setting a price as against it. That is why I think the trade-offs may, in fact, impacts SDG 8 about the economic growth, because it's relevant to the economy. And also, can someone remind me about SDG 10 about reducing inequalities? Thanks.
It was a similar thought than for the first question, because if we have carbon pricing, we thought that most probably products that are more intense in carbon emissions are going to be more expensive, because the production of it is going to be more expensive. But rich people, people with a lot of money, will still have the option to buy them. They might be less inclined to do so, but it's still going to be possible for them. Whereas for a lot of other people, lacking the financial resources, this would take away products for them to consume, and they would be less free in their choice. So yeah, that's why we also picked reduce inequalities, so SDG 10 as a 10 as a trade-off.
Yeah, amazing. So I really like the connections and the pros and cons. I think this one on carbon price is especially interesting. I think that you mentioned now. I don't know if you remember, but in 2018 we had this big social movement in France, the Gilets jaunes, and it was precisely because of that. So the French government decided to establish a carbon price, and they did this after like many rounds of discussion as being one of their climate action. And what happened was, in the end, the effect was so many carbon intense processes became so expensive that this ended up affecting middle income or low income families. So, for example, they couldn't afford some products, or they couldn't consume some of the consumer goods that they used to. So this is a very real example. I think from this group, what I really like is you chose the option for transportation to invest in electric cars, right? But when we invest in electric cars, we have to produce these cars, right? What is one of the main consequences of producing more cars? Batteries, of course. I heard batteries some. Yeah. So I think the first problem is batteries, right? So they are mostly using copper and lithium and other rare minerals. And the thing is, if demand spikes, what's going to happen is, especially the countries that have big reserves, they are going to probably feel the pressure with instabilities, sometimes conflict, and all of that. We already see this happening. But there is another problem. What is the problem of all of the sudden investing in more production?
Like maybe it's also sort of burden on the waste management aspect. So that's like the landfills and then the scraps of the old machines and the cars.
I mean, on the one hand, there are just going to be lots of cars around, like busier streets, because the older cars still exist. People won't just go and buy a new car if they can still use their car. And also, again, rising inequality, although there would be all kinds of other implications, like you need to do a lot of public planning to have enough charging stations, or else you need to have two cars, so like one for the city and one to go longer distances. So it could also backfire in some ways.
Great. I think these are very great examples. And there's one thing that we normally forgot, which is whenever we are producing new things, we are also emitting more. So CO2 emissions, they actually spike if we decide to invest and prioritize electric cars. Isn't that crazy? Would you reassess any of your choices now that we have thought about the trade-offs and the synergies? Or would you try to adapt the choice to try to minimize the trade-offs? What do you think? No, you would still make the same decisions, take the same decisions here? Would you still, for example, invest in electric cars?
Yeah, I think we went based off what's there, but maybe with the knowledge that we have, that I think this whole invest in electric cars is maybe a 10-year-old already policy, and that today we see a lot of things more around the 15-minute city and what the Global Innovation Hub have here in the UNFCCC. They say it's the necessity is not mobility, it's access to products and to goods, and that this invest in could then be changed as time progresses.
So maybe consider the electric cars, but also other options that might be more efficient. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking like after going through this activity and going through the questions and talking about synergies and trade-offs, I'm just thinking like we're not really involving the rural communities in these discussions. I think right now when we come to transportation and electric cars, it's just not accessible to rural communities. I mean, I'm from a rural community, so like having accessibility to even applying these decisions to those communities is like highly difficult and challenging because each community is very different. And I think also one thing too is like we're like the knowledge systems, like really applying like community-based initiatives with these decisions would be highly beneficial too. And even talking about the synergies, I was just thinking like ways of knowing should be part of that. I feel like that would bring a whole nother holistic understanding of like bringing together what these synergies mean and what does sustainable development mean, not from a Eurocentric perspective, but from like a holistic perspective, because every culture is different, especially for like indigenous communities. There's languages, there's like stories, there's like that intergenerational knowledge that I feel like kind of gets lost when we kind of categorize what sustainable development looks like. And I feel like we're also categorizing what it looks like when making decisions like the trade-offs and synergies. So I don't know what that would look like, but I just thought I should just like mention that and just like kind of reflecting on it now. And coming from a community like that, I think it's really important to kind of get thinking like that and then make more activities that kind of touch on those areas would be beneficial.
Yeah, I think thank you, amazing point, because I think this is what we should actually work on. This knowledge is there. We already know about synergies. We know that if we take a decision only looking at the climate action impact, we're going to also impact other areas. But I think the question is, if the knowledge is there, if we have, especially, for example, knowledge systems that have been so vocal about synergies and about us considering a holistic approach, why aren't we taking this, for example, to national development plans? Why are we not taking this to NDCs? We've recently had a report on the synergies between Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda, and they mapped 173 NDCs. Do you know how many of these 173 NDCs mention the SDGs? Can you guess? Wild guess. No, you're a little better than that. No. Nope, less than that. Less than 40. Less than 40. Sorry? 23 out of 173 people. And we are not talking about a commitment that came yesterday, right? The 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement, they came together. They were born together. Why are we not planning accordingly? Because this knowledge that we need on synergies was lost. So the idea and what we wanted to bring with this exercise, and now Simon will guide us through the end of the session, is how can we make this knowledge not only known, but how can we activate or bring this knowledge back to discussions? How can we attend, for example, events like the SCBs, or attend negotiations, or take part in discussions, for example, with loss and damage, with just transitions, with consumption, and make sure that this is not forgotten? Simon, what do you think?
What do I think? It's an easy question. Well, no, I think Really, I'm going to pick up on what you said about context and what might apply in one place may not be true for the other. And I think it shows up in your answers as well. It shows up when you both have 8 in the pro and the con column. It also shows up when you were making that point about inequalities, that maybe things become more expensive for certain people. But then we're looking at inequalities in a country, but maybe on a global level, this might even reduce inequalities because people in richer countries might end up paying a fairer price for the carbon, which is not the case. There's a lot more extraction and carbon that certain countries produce at this time. Another very interesting one was in this exercise when you had SDG 7. And if you look at it, there were two parts to that. There is clean and affordable energy. And it was in the, so it might, and I don't remember which one it was, but it might have an impact on maybe one of those things, the clean part, but maybe not the affordable. So is that a synergy or is it a trade-off? So I think it's all leading to the same thing. And the whole point, and thank you for indulging us here. This is an impossible exercise. This is not how this is done at all. But you were really great sports and you supported each choice. So you had solid, valid reasons, but then we introduce new information. We introduce another, oh, did you know this? And of course your answers change. And that's sort of the whole point that we were trying to make here, that the only thing we've seen in this session is that one, we need to not think short term, because our choices today, maybe they fix one part of the problem but create problems which are difficult to undo, which require 40 points at the end, and it may be too late in certain cases. And I think the other one is about context, and it's about conversations, and it's about this fact that we cannot afford to have tunnel vision where each one of us is specializing in one or the other thing. But from time to time, we need to come out, zoom out a little bit, and try to look at problems from a slightly wider perspective, which is where the synergies, and not forgetting the trade-offs. We can't talk about synergies without trade-offs. So that really is it. And what we meant to do for the last part, and I know we've taken way more time than we did, but on the other hand, I also feel like this is a discussion. We could have a longer workshop with you. We just wanted you to reflect on all of this that you have told us. We haven't actually told you anything today. All the answers have come from the group. But really think about your individual roles in this, or maybe you think of it as your collective role. And collectively, we've labeled ourselves as youth leaders who are here to change things, to make a better future. So maybe we take 5 minutes and we do two things. And Talita, with your permission, I'm also going to skip ahead a little. Yes. So we do two things. One, we take 5 minutes. We think about what is the role that youth can play in finding these synergies and minimizing these trade-offs between the Paris Agreement and the development agenda. So what is the role that you can play? And when you're reflecting on that, we'll give you one of these big post-its. Also think of what is a personal commitment that you would like to make, you as the individual. When you go away from here, how are you going to take this thought process forward? So we'll give you the 5 minutes, at the end of which we'd love to hear what your answer was to the first question, that what can youth do as a collective to further this idea of synergies, working with synergies and trade-offs. And the personal commitment bit, you don't have to share it unless you want to. So we leave that up to you. So let's pass around a few post-its. You can get reflecting and thinking, and then we'll give you 5 minutes to really put it all together. Yeah. Mhm. And of course, you get to keep it. This is the commitment bit is for yours. It's yours to take. Everybody has one. Yeah. You scramble it, you put it back. That's lesson number 3. Accountability. Yeah. right? Yeah. Yeah. Bad way to actually pick. Okay, folks, let's hear from you now. We've obviously come to the very end and we are wrapping up, but really, show of hands, whoever wants to go first, who wants to share an answer to the first question, which is what can youth do to ensure those synergies between the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda? Anyone?
Kind of break the ice. As a first point, I had to share with our communities this knowledge and this approach because I feel young people usually are very well connected and have big communities. And the more people know about it and use the approach in whatever they do, the more synergies and trade-offs we're going to find, and the more they're going to be taken into account. Also, because 2 points that kind of go hand in hand with each other. With the more we thought about synergies and trade-offs, the more perspectives we gathered, the more points we gathered. So make sure that youth perspectives on what synergies and trade-offs could be are included, but then also raise our voice for other groups that are underrepresented at the table and make sure that they're heard as well, because what might be a synergy for some person might not technically be a synergy on every level, and maybe you with your perspective just cannot see that at the moment. That's why it's important that we actually talk to the people on the ground and in the local communities to make sure to really hear everybody's perspective.
Thank you so much. And what you described is essentially that goal 17, because we think about it sometimes as, okay, let's do something together. But at the heart of it, really what it's saying is, let's talk to those people we don't usually talk to. Let's remind ourselves to do that. That's what that really means. Not so much as we needn't do something, but we need to have the perspective. Anyone else wants to share? That was a really good point. We go. I saw you first, Leila. Go use that mic, and you can have mine. Thank you. After that.
Awesome. I guess the place I'm coming from and what I said earlier this morning is coming to youth that are in corporate, because I think if we think about it from a Paris Agreement perspective, there are 70 companies that are responsible for the largest carbon, right? And we're trying to push these companies from the top. But how could we bring in youth, as you very rightly said, that we're very well connected. We have large communities. We have a future to fight for. And normally in these corporates, it's the HR or somebody telling the company what to do. And I think that if youth took a more representative and had a place on the table, like what's happening now for policy, then perhaps a couple of things could be moved, both in a starting the discussion, but also in the process. Just everything can be digitized nowadays. It's not that hard. It's just putting these things together, right? And I guess in my pledge, and just adding it here, I work with the inner development goals, which is meant to be kind of an additional add-on to this, to say, okay, from a behavioral science standpoint, from a indigenous wisdom standpoint, what are we missing? Why are we doing it? It's because we don't know how to work together. We have hard times caring for ourselves. How do we care for the planet? And so I see the importance of making sure that we understand our traumas, that we understand the difficult things that as humans we go through, and how that is affecting our decision making. You have kids that are running around in the morning and didn't give you a chance to actually think before you stepped out of the door. That's going to be very different than if you came in relaxed and had a little holiday the couple of weeks before, right? So I think youth is able to have a little bit more time to think about those things, and can also push those maybe what the Germans sometimes call esoteric, which is basically just bringing in the soul of humanity into what we're doing as well.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to consider ourselves the role of us youth to more on a downwards direction. I mean, of course, youth being on the negotiating table, it's a very important thing. But personally, I like to think more about how we influence people who are just slightly younger than us, but not necessarily our next generation. Because sometimes I see this generation gap is actually hindering different generations to communicate important things such as climate change. But if, for example, me being a practitioner in the field of climate action might have a larger influences than, for example, my parents might have a bigger influences than they having on for example, my cousin who is still in high school. This apparently we are closer to each other simply because we have a smaller age gap. But this closer relationship sometimes means a lot to to direct, to guide people who are only slightly younger than us to devote in this career, in this cause. For example, for my cousin, nowadays climate change probably only means to them on the textbook, doesn't really mean anything specific, substantial to him in real life. But the fact that me working in this field, working with the UNFCCC, working with you together might have to have a real impact to make him think, okay, what does this topic of climate change means in the real life? And this may have an influence on him in his future, either life choice or job development. I don't know, but I think this is something that's us as the youth has a unique advantage than our older generation. And yeah, that's what I think about as the role of the youth.
That's such a great reflection. And it reminded me, I'll just come to you. It actually reminded me of something I heard in this very room almost a year ago. We did a training here last year. I can even tell you who said it because I think that person deserves credit as well. It was the former president of Costa Rica. His name is Carlos Alvarado. He was here. And he said something, and he said, we think of ourselves as citizens, we think of ourselves as activists or, whoever was the audience on that day. But what we should think of ourselves is, how can I be a good ancestor? And that really, for me, that really did it. It's the thing that stuck with me. And what you said, it sort of comes back, it brings that back. It's really a wonderful way of framing it because you see not just it's the whole definition of sustainable development, right? With the future generation, it's the interconnections. It brought all that in. So no, that's a wonderful point. Thanks for sharing. I know more. Yes. Yes. One last point from the group. No, I saw two hands. I think we should do it. We'll be quick, but we'll wrap up. But let's let both people speak. Yeah.
Just a very small point for me, but I think one of the big advantages of youth, especially really young youth that's still in high school, is that they haven't picked a career path yet. And especially when we're thinking about synergies and maybe looking at issues from various perspectives, it can be really inducive for creativity. And maybe in the next few generations, there even will be like completely new job categories that span across different sectors. So I think just bringing those ideas out there and making sure that people don't treat issues in isolation could create a lot of innovation.
Thank you. So actually, before coming here, I was in a bilateral meeting with the chair of the African group, and talking about youth engagements and also negotiations and all the things. And something really important that came out with from that meeting was this is what I wrote actually, to have less youth advocacy and more concrete engagements in negotiations. Why? Because I think here there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs, and a lot of organizations advocating for youth engagements, but before seeing me as a young person, see me as an expert in something. So this is something very important and related to all this intersection of SDGs. If we understand the why behind of these intersections, we we will promote if I'm on the table of negotiations, because I'm an expert on following up the loss and damage or climate finance or whatever, and not only saying, okay, we need to engage youth, but no, we need to recognize my competencies despite my age. So yeah.
Stop waiting for programs. No, I have nothing to say, but I do want Talita to have the last word, who put this wonderful program together. So, but I do want to, because she gets the last word, so I get to say this before that. It's really nice to have interacted in this way. We usually, our trainings are a little bigger, so it gets a little impersonal, although we do enjoy this the most. It's really hearing from people. And I will say this is true for almost 100% of what we do. We always end up learning a lot more than we knew before we came into the room. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. And hopefully we see you in another training. And Talita, last word goes to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. It was really, as someone just said, a nice experience. We learned a lot. And I really like that we get to close with this final message, because I personally, I have been working as a young person, as with youth for most of my career. And I do think that normally we see youth as someone that we have to include, because let's allow them to be in the room. But that's not the point. We have competencies, we have expertise, we have knowledge, and we might be able to bring a perspective that no one else is going to. So let's also approach our participation and our inclusion in this process like this. We are the experts. We are there to contribute as everyone else. And I think this is the nicest message we can have here today. I would like just to finish with a final invitation to you. We have a program at UNSSC that is going to run from 19th August to 27th September, which this year has a special edition, specially dedicated to university students and youth organizations, which is my Sustainable Living Challenge, actually created by my colleague here.
Definitely not for sure.
Yes. So my Sustainable Living Challenge is a very action-oriented program. We are going to compete through 6 weeks. We are going to make different actions on different lifestyle domains. So things we eat, the things we buy, what are the others, how we live. He is an expert. Yeah. So the idea is we have small challenges every week, and every team gets to make these challenges and compete. The idea is we want university students to compete among themselves and also youth organizations. So if you want to maybe gather a group of 7 to 10, 7 to 10 colleagues and register in our website. We have some QR codes with some frequent asked questions if you want to check the program. It's a really nice one. UNEP, who is our partner for this program, is sponsoring 2,000 participants. So this will be fully covered. And if you would like to continue on this journey of discussing sustainable lifestyle synergies and the connections of these topics, just register and join us for the challenge. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thanks really especially for inviting us. It was a pleasure to be here. Hopefully we can do more of these sessions in the future.
Can we have a huge round of applause for UNSC? That was such a fun session, small group, but very personal. So on behalf of Youth4Capacity program, which sits at the UNFCCC between the capacity building team and the Action for Climate Empowerment team, this is what we do. We try to make young people as expert as they can get and be in as many spaces, as many rooms, small, big, all of that. So we would love for you to engage more with the program and with our partners, much like UNSC and a bunch of others that we've seen through this week. With this, we come to the end of Youth4Capacity sessions at SP60. We're still around, so if you do see us, you're here in week 2, come say hi. We are all in this general area, and you can find out more about our program and all that we're doing for the rest of the year. But given that we're a small group, I also want to take the opportunity to get a quick picture of all of us. We'll put the SDGs behind. Yeah, we can. Yeah, why don't you pick up your pledges as well, and then we'll put the SDGs behind it, and Pamela will help us get a picture. Thank you.
Do you want me to use your camera?